Hi, can you hear me? Great. Well, let's get started here. Can everybody see the presentation? Yes. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining today. My name is Jack Reed. I'm a software engineer and I work at Stanford Libraries. And co-presenting today with me is Camille. You want to introduce yourself? Oh, can we get Camille unmuted somehow?
Okay, there. Yes, awesome. Thanks, Meg. Yeah, hi, I'm Camille Villa. I'm also a software engineer at Stanford Libraries, and I work on Mirador as well.
Great. And so today we're going to talk about Mirador 3. We're going to give a brief introduction to the Mirador project. We're going to talk about some of the Mirador 3 features. We're going to talk about how to get started with Mirador. And then we're going to open it up for more questions and demos. So we hope to have a great discussion kind of following on the presentation. So what is Mirador? Mirador is an open source JavaScript library that aims to provide comparison, visualization, and analysis tools for IIIF content. It's used as a viewer to do this comparison. It's been used for annotation, transcription, IIIF unification, and analysis. It's, and it's used in a variety of contexts. So teaching, research, digital exhibits, and it can be implemented as a standalone viewer. It can be embedded in other sites and contexts, or it can be highly customized for a research tool. And Mirador has been around for a while here. We'll talk a little bit about the past. It started in 2013. It really focused on image comparison as the primary use case. This is a screenshot of Mirador 2, comparing two Van Gogh images from different organizations. And one thing about Mirador is it's always been a multi-institution collaboration. So what is Mirador 3, which is what we're talking mostly about today? Mirador 3 is a rewrite in the new architecture of the popular comparison and visualization tool Mirador. So we have Mirador 2 on the left and kind of the same images viewed in Mirador 3 on the right. There's a whole lot more to it. We're excited to talk about it. You might ask, why a rewrite? Well, we had a lot of lessons learned from Mirador 2. And as you saw, Mirador started in 2013. Mirador 2, I think, started in 2014, 2015. And being, 5 years later, there's a whole variety of new technical approaches. So we wanted to use the new technical approaches. We also kind of designed it from the ground up. So by using a lot of in-depth user interviews of existing Mirador adopters and people who maybe wanted to adopt Mirador, our user experience designers were able to give a lot of new attention to the user experience and also accessibility at the same time. And also with new IIIF specifications coming online and new features, we wanted to provide a bunch of new improved functionality. So this Mirador 3 project has been going on for several years now. It started in 2018 when we were planning. Our user experience designers started designing the user experience. And at the same time, software engineers were starting to look at new technical approaches. The project kicked off formally in January of 2019 with a collaboration between Stanford, University of Leipzig, Princeton, the Bavarian State Library, and Harvard. That work continued for several months up until April of last year, and it concluded with several kind of alpha releases of Mirador 3. It then, at Stanford, we put it into production shortly thereafter in June last year. And in the past year, we've been releasing many new beta versions of the software, creating plugins, and kind of stabilizing the API to get additional features, feature parity with Mirador 2, and a whole bunch of new stuff. So there's been a lot of improvements in the project, and just on the technical side of the project. About a 64% reduction in size of the project. So users who are using Mirador have 64% less code to download before they can start using Mirador. It's well tested now. Previously, the tests were a little sparse, and now it's highly tested. It's also installable via npm or yarn. You don't need to clone the repository and fork Mirador and run your own fork of Mirador. You can just install the core and extend from there. There's a larger core contributor team now. So we have contributors contributing to Mirador 3 from multiple institutions from all over the world. And one big thing to call out is there's been, like I mentioned earlier, a focus on accessibility from the start. So all of the interaction patterns and features of Mirador 3 have been designed with accessibility in mind. And one thing to also mention here is we've revamped and created a plugin architecture. So Mirador 3 is like pluggable and extendable. We'll also mention that we're no longer maintaining Mirador 2. We don't have the capacity to maintain both Mirador 3 and Mirador 2 software projects. And so that is, we're just using Mirador 3 now. So I'm going to pass it over to Camille to talk about some of the Mirador 3 features.
Okay, there we go. Thanks for bearing with us, everyone. Okay, so heading into Mirador 3, you see really classic IIIF viewer features you'd expect, this ability to zoom in on the details in this manuscript. And of course, Mirador has this strong focus on image comparison and the ability to kind of rearrange various manifests and view them together. So Jack, next slide. So Mirador 3 has two different workspace types. So this is Mosaic, where you can see all of the windows are trying to fit the maximum amount of space. This is Elastic Mode, which is kind of like an infinite workspace. Users can kind of drag their images around or kind of store them off to the side. And so that offers kind of flexibility for other workflows. Next slide. All right, and then you can also see we have a couple different modes for viewing manifests. So I think this is book mode. There's also a gallery view. So when you're looking at manifests that have many canvases and you're trying to get a good overview of what's there. Let's see, next slide. And again, so one of the big pieces of feedback we kept hearing over Mirador 2 was that a lot of functionality was hidden in the sidebar, and that the ability to view information about a manifest, or several kinds of information about a manifest simultaneously, was really important. So we've introduced this idea of companion windows. So you can see that in this example, we have information, we have metadata information about annotations visible at the same time, and also a IIIF search results. So being able to kind of really take advantage of all of the IIIF presentation features and view those simultaneously was super important. Next slide. And of course, like all great software projects, Mirador has a light and dark mode now. That's the thing. Okay, next slide. In addition to theme Mirador, so this is an example from Stanford's digital repository where we've changed the colors slightly so they match that cardinal red. This ability to theme and customize for your local institution was another kind of driving design factor for the Mirador redesign. And so we've made that a lot simpler to do, and we'll get into some examples of that down the line. Okay, let's see, next. So Mirador has the ability to display both canvas level metadata and manifest level metadata. Next. And we also support IIIF ranges, right, Jeff? So in this example, you can see we have Shakespeare's plays, and we're able to kind of drill down into the comedies and jump to a specific play, and kind of we get this highlighting on the left in the table of contents that lets us know where we are in the manifest. Next example. Okay, so another thing that we have in Mirador 3 is this ability to import and export a workspace, right? So, you can set up a default view for Mirador, but if you're a researcher and maybe you've added some additional manifests, you've resized them, rearranged them, you have the ability to then export that into a JSON object and kind of reload that state later. And so that was something we also heard about in our design interviews. Next slide.
Yeah. And so Mirador 3 also allows you to use IIIF layers here. So on the left, you can see a paper letter from Alexander Hamilton that has a lot of different layers, different light spectrums, things like that. You can change the opacity, you can turn layers on and off. You can also rearrange them. Similarly, the one on the right is the classic Dublissima demo with a cutting from a kind of reunification example of a cutting from another organization being shown on top of another page there. Mirador 3 also supports the IIIF authentication API. So if you want to provide restricted access to some of your content, it provides kind of the auth workflows. So users, only authenticated users can log in and view the content. So here's an example of us integrating it with our local two-step authentication. It's also worth noting this works with a lot of other authentication services. So some of the example IIIF auth services that Tom Crane has set up, and it works with that as well. Mirador 3 also works nicely with the IIIF search within APIs. So it works with autocomplete here, or you can pass a search in. You can also then page through your search results. You kind of get a little bit snippet of kind of the context of that search result. And you can kind of navigate your manifest or content that way as well. We worked really hard on providing kind of first-class right-to-left support in Mirador 3. So here's an example of a Mirador 3 embedded on a web page that is in Arabic and kind of has the HTML direction right to left. The manifest also has the viewing direction of right to left. So the control sidebar shows up on the right as we would expect it, and also users can navigate the content right to left. So there's also wide internationalization support in Mirador 3. So all of the strings, things within the application are also internationalized, so they can be translated into other languages. And we currently have 10 different translations. Here are all the translations for Mirador 3. And we're open, and if you'd like to help translate Mirador 3 into another language, we can help you start with that. Mirador 3 has annotation viewing. So we'll talk a little bit about the support of it, but we can see these annotations being viewable. They're in the companion window, and these companion windows can be resized and moved around. We're excited to announce that we've released a 0.1.0 version of an annotation creation plugin in Mirador 3. So this isn't in the core code base of Mirador, but it's in a plugin. But here we can see annotations able to be created. Styling change, they can be resized and also moved. And to talk a little bit more about plugins here, we've put a lot of some of these features from Mirador 2 into plugins. So here we can see the image tools, which is a separate plugin that allows you to kind of make modifications to the image there, adjust the contrast, brightness, things like that. We've also created 2 plugins, share plugin, allowing you to embed the viewer elsewhere, or also a download plugin. So you could download images or related content there as well. So a quick kind of recap of some of the differences between Mirador and 2 and 3. You can do the image manipulation is kind of core in Mirador 2, but we popped it into a plugin for Mirador 3. Mirador 2 allows you to view open annotations that are in open annotation. In Mirador 3, you can not only view open annotation, but you can also view web annotations. In Mirador 2, you are able to create annotations using open annotation kind of within the default core of the application. In Mirador 3, we've created a Mirador annotation plugin where you can create annotations. These are in the web annotation specification. In Mirador 2, there was kind of limited support of IIIF collections. In Mirador 3, there's been a lot of work that's gone into kind of the design of this and the technical approach. And that's in progress, actually. And you could see a preview of kind of how that works for now. There's wide IIIF specification support in Mirador 3. So we not only support the image version 2 and version 3 plus level 0 support, we also support presentation 2 and 3 for images, as well as the search and auth APIs. There's table of contents support in both 2 and 3, and we have multiple sequence support in progress for Mirador 3. So I'm going to turn it back over to Camille to talk about getting started with Mirador.
All right. So again, as I mentioned, Mirador 3, we've put a lot of focus on the ability to kind of turn parts of the viewer on or off as it suits your local use case, and trying to centralize that in one place in our settings file. We are still trying to figure out the best way to document this and communicate these settings. But for now, folks can take a look at the settings file on GitHub. It's very annotated with comments, and that's kind of the source of truth in terms of what's available in the settings at the moment. All right, okay, so I'm gonna show a couple examples of customizing Mirador. And so one question that we do get a lot is, does Mirador support gallery view? Or what would a museum mode for Mirador look like? So I have two examples of how to approach that. So in this example, you can see I have a couple of my favorite IIIF cats. So these are manifests from several institutions. And what this actually looks like in the code file is, if you can switch to the next slide, Jack. So this really just looks like a list of links. And then I think in the middle there, you can see, so there's an example from the Bodleian, and that image is actually like somewhere in the middle of that manuscript. So we've also told Mirador to load it at the 76th canvas. Okay, so that's an example of manifest from several institutions. So in my next example, this is highlighting a manifest that has many canvases. So this is single manifest, single institution. And in this example, we've set it to the gallery view by default. We have the sidebar metadata open by default. You can also see that I've disabled some of the larger workspace options on the left. So one example is like you could have this on maybe like an iPad or a kiosk. So we've disabled the ability to add new manifests so that a patron who's interacting with this viewer they're really only looking at this particular set of images. Okay, and so what does that look like? Again, so allow close. So a patron can't like accidentally like close the viewer. And we've also disabled the annotation side panel. It's not relevant to this particular manifest, and we've disabled some of the other navigation options here. Okay, so let's look at our next example. So as I mentioned, theming is a pretty standard customization. So this is an example. I've created a theme called SUL, Stanford University Libraries, and we've defined we've changed the primary and secondary colors to Stanford branded colors here. I think we've also tweaked the color for, I think that's annotations or notifications. Okay, so that's like a very simple color palette change, but you can really, if you can go wild with theming if you want. So this is my personal Mirador theme. I've changed out some typography. I've gone a little more into detail here with changing the colors in several different areas of the viewer. So that's also on CodePen if you want to play with that. All right, next example. Again, this is just a viewer that is set to Elastic Workspace by default. So this might be like if you were using Mirador in maybe like a DH application or maybe like a virtual slide table, you might want to set Mirador to Elastic by default. Okay. All right, so those are just a few simple examples of how to customize Mirador. But we are, we're a community, and there are a lot of ways to get support, find other folks who are maybe interested in similar use cases. So one of the first things we really encourage is if you have a question, about Mirador, or there's functionality that you'd like to see, it's really helpful to file an issue on GitHub. That helps us kind of track what folks are asking about over time, and it helps us, if kind of create communities and connect people who might be interested in working on similar things. Another way to get involved is to add or review translations. I think, so we do have 10 languages in Mirador, but as you can imagine, as functionality gets added, we always need a little more help keeping translations up to date. And so that process, you don't need to be experienced with GitHub or the command line. And we're happy to help to support folks who are interested in working on translations. Another way to contribute is we are always looking for manifests that really kind of push the IIIF spec and use a lot of the rich features that are available there. So we keep a list of sample fixtures, and so that really helps the development team kind of make sure that that Mirador is able to work with a variety of use cases. We also keep a lot of documentation in our wiki, and so hearing your feedback about examples that might be broken or that aren't clear also helps us keep the project, keep it vital. Okay, another way to get involved is come hang out with us on IIIF Slack. The Mirador channel is a great place to chat. If you're trying to customize a Mirador instance or trying to troubleshoot, please also reach out for help there. That's kind of the best way to get the community's hive mind working on something and get feedback quickly. We also have a community call every 2 weeks. And so we always have open space during that for either demos from members of the community, or if you have an idea for a plugin that you want to talk about, that's a great, fairly casual space to do that. And of course, we are an open source project, so we always welcome code contributions. All right, so what's next, Jack? Oh, sorry, I hid that in the, sorry, that's our translation stats. As you can see, we're pretty good on English, Arabic, and German, and French at the moment. We could use like some minor updates in our other languages. Okay, sorry. Okay, your turn, Jack.
Yeah, so we just kind of want to briefly mention what's next for Mirador. So we sent an email to the IIIF community and Mirador tech lists a few weeks ago saying there was an imminent kind of version 3.0 release coming soon. And we've actually delayed that a little bit because the team at Stanford's been able to push some work forward on annotation creation, and also some new technical approaches to better support collections and multiple sequences. So we've delayed that just a little bit, but we hope to see a final release kind of in the next week or so. And kind of what's next coming from the Mirador team at Stanford? Well, we want to do some more work on the annotation creation plugin, and we'd like to finalize collections and multiple sequence support and kind of get this final release out. We don't have, I think those kind of the main things we've been focusing on, and we're not really, we don't kind of have a prioritized understanding of what's next for the project. So we'd like to hear from you to better understand what's next. So with that, we're going to maybe switch over to talk about some questions or maybe demos if people want to talk about demos. So maybe let's start with the questions that are already been asked in the Q&A. And the first question is, does Mirador 3 support IIIF presentation v3 manifests? And the answer to that is yes, for image content. Brian asks, does it work with auth 0? And I believe the answer is yes, but we probably aren't committed to maintaining support for non-released specs. If that's my wiggle way out of not supporting that in the future. Julian asks, maybe this is a question or feature request, but when is IIIF karaoke coming? I don't know, but we probably need to work on this.
Which is maybe also to say that we are not actively working on IIIF AV in Mirador. We're not opposed to it, but I don't think we have a kind of critical mass of developer resources around that at the moment.
Yep. So that's a good point to call out. Next question. I'm wondering about the search feature. Is it fully implemented client side? Can you say a couple words about how it is implemented? So the search feature in Mirador 3 requires a IIIF search service. So it uses the IIIF search within API and queries that to provide the autocomplete and the search results. I hope that answers your question, Edwin. Feel free to add follow-up questions if that doesn't fully address it. Next question pertains to plugins. Would I be able to add a leaflet viewer as a view, perhaps even for a unique view of annotations? The short answer is yes. Plugins are very powerful, and you can do a lot of different things with plugins. That's the short answer. The longer answer is it can be complicated, right? And so what we found is we've done a lot of work in building plugins, and the team at University of Leipzig has done a lot of work at developing plugins as well. And you can do a whole lot of things, but it's a Camille demoed a lot of the settings and kind of how how it's easy to use the settings. The plugins kind of elevates it, makes it a little bit harder to dive into that. So I'm going to answer yes, but it can get complicated. So it's not to say that no, you cannot do it, but it's just there's going to be development work that needs to happen to make that happen.
And I would also encourage folks who are interested in developing plugins to please seek support on Slack or show up to community calls, because I think that's kind of the best way to get feedback or advice from other folks who have developed plugins.
It's a great point.
Please do not struggle alone.
Can you talk about or show how Mirador 3 behaves on mobile devices, different screen sizes? Related, how does import-export of workspaces adapt to different screen resolutions? Good question, Stu. So maybe I'll share a different screen, and we can maybe look at some examples of that. Can you see my screen here?
Mm-hmm.
So Mirador is responsive, and it uses a framework that is kind of gives us a lot of flexibility with that responsiveness. So for example, I have kind of a desktop sized version of this here. And if I switch to an iPad, you can see how some of the images have changed and some of the UI has changed. The title is shortened here. I can switch to a phone, and the workspace sidebar has now gone horizontal here instead of vertical. So that's just some examples of how this stuff might change. It can get a little weird with the sidebars, but you can still kind of do things. I think, you know, you could use Mirador for a lot of things on mobile. Primarily, I think we conceive it as a viewer on mobile so that IIIF content can be viewed well. So for example, in one of our websites where we use Mirador, you know, people can view the web page and people can also view the content here. We don't expect them, we kind of don't expect, or I don't expect scholars to be creating workspaces and doing windows and things like that in this type of view, but certainly they could. It'd just be a lot more difficult. And the different workspaces, when imported or exported, adapt differently. So to answer this question, this workspace here, viewed on an iPad, and then when I switch to an iPhone, and then import, kind of looks the same here. The screen sizes here, or the kind of window sizes, are kind of a percentage of the overall space. I hope that answers your question, Stu. I'm just going to click answered live. Peter asks, to be clear, IIIF karaoke means AV support broadly. Yes, I think so. I think the idea is, well, I'm going to say we think it would be cool to drive a karaoke experience using Mirador.
That's the dream.
And I think that means annotations, audio visual support, and, you know, other karaoke needs. Simeon asks, could AV be implemented as a plugin, or would it have to be a change to core? I think it could be implemented as a plugin. We've kind of thought about it. We've kind of thought about AV being a plugin. But I don't know, I'm not aware of anybody who's done that technical exploration in depth, but that's kind of how I would envision it. Who is responsible for the user research, user interface, usability, UX of IIIF Mirador? So I think there's a lot of people who have worked on that over over time. So I don't want to miss any of the people who've contributed hard work to this over the past 7 years. But for Mirador 3, the primary user experience designers have been Jennifer Vine and Gary Geisler.
And I'm going to drop a link in the chat to the Mirador design repo. So that was kind of, as folks are interested in seeing some of what that process looked like. This is where Gary and Jennifer gathered use cases that they had kind of pulled out of user interviews. And I do want to mention there are some upcoming kind of usability and accessibility testing efforts that are being facilitated by the University of Leipzig and Jack, what's the other one?
There's been some, there was some user experience work happening through the University of Minnesota UX lab, but that project's, I think, been put on hold because of COVID-19. Good, great questions. Another question here, does it support all image formats? Is there a preferred image format? It supports IIIF image services. So if your content is in IIIF, we would aim to support it. And I don't think we have a preference on that, but there's some kind of ways to do things where you're going to have, I guess, better performance. So kind of there's some, it's not maybe Mirador specific, it's just kind of a ways to implement IIIF image APIs that are kind of better for performance. I hope that answers your question. Please ask another question if we haven't. Has there been any user requests for a jump to page functionality? We've had this request in Mirador 2. I haven't heard it yet in Mirador 3. I don't believe, but maybe Gary and Jennifer have. But we've tried to accomplish this actually, I think, by providing a nice, I guess what we call like a index companion window here. So it could allow users to easily jump to these different pages. I'm not sure if that's the same kind of chip as the same functionality you're referring to, but that's kind of one of the goals is to then kind of provide that functionality through this side panel here. Another question here, sounds like the save workspace function replaced the bookmark function. Sure, yeah. The bookmark function is kind of a representation of the state. And so the save workspace allows you to import and export that workspace out. So a user can do that manually like we showed here. You know, you can import one manually or export it, but programmatic use of this is also available. The Mirador 3 API kind of can allow an application to import and export directly through there as well. I'm just going to keep going through the questions here. How are we doing on time? 10 minutes left. Okay. We're going to get through as many as we can here. Does Mirador 3 allow to visualize and maintain the aspect ratio of individual images in your workspace? I'm not sure I understand this. As a user zooms and pans here, the images maintain their aspect ratio in which they're delivered from the image server.
You mean related to like exporting a workspace, maybe?
They will, if you import or export a workspace, the windows will appear at the zoom in the center location of where that is provided. We have a question from Kianori. Good to see you, Kianori. Should I learn React.js if I want to make a plugin? I think the answer is yes, it would be helpful to you to have some React background to make a plugin. You're going to be kind of, Mirador 3 is built using React components, and the plugins are kind of designed as React components. And that would help you to build a Mirador plugin for sure. That's a great question, and we have a wiki page that links some of the Mirador plugin examples. And I'd also, there's also a directory in the Mirador test suite called plugins. That is also kind of shows a lot of different examples of plugins and how they can be written. So I think that's a good kind of place to also check out if you're interested in building plugins. Next question, do you plan to support the scenario that user can create her own manifest collections? In other words, will she be able to create her own custom collection of zoomable pages with something like drag and drop? So right now, you have the ability to, right now in Mirador, you have the ability to add new IIIF content to it. So if I have a manifest URL, you can add the resource and paste it here, and then create a window view like that. It's not creating a IIIF collection per se in the specification sense, but you can do that, and you can export the workspace and import it somewhere else. We've done a proof of concept with IIIF drag and drop, and that could be worked, but frankly, we haven't heard that as like people haven't clamored for that. So we've kind of deprioritized that as a use case. So we haven't really heard that as a feature request that people wanted to do, but it's definitely doable, and we have it kind of working, semi-working. When pulling in resources from other sites, can you run into cross-origin resource sharing problems? Most definitely, yes. And we really hope that all IIIF content providers enable CORS, cross-origin resource sharing, for their content, as well as provide the content via HTTPS. Many of the same questions about AV, also about 3D object viewing. Yes, the answers are all the same, except there's no specification for 3D object viewing. So maybe it's even more ephemeral, but you could do that as a plugin, sure. Which institution has Mirador 3? I think there's a lot of institutions that already have Mirador 3 deployed in production. Stanford's been, does that. The Big Ten Geoportal project has it. OCLC's using it in their IIIF Explorer, and I think probably in Content DM soon. There's a lot of other types of organizations. I think Europeana has some work on Mirador 3. So there's a lot of people that have already adopted it, and I'm probably missing a ton. So please fill into the chat, if, you know, or drop into the Mirador channel to talk about your Mirador 3 uses. Does Mirador support in-band images and band manipulation in RGB? Nope. Mirador supports images served from the IIIF image API. So if it can be served from the image API, it can be viewed in Mirador 3, and it doesn't do any band manipulation. Not a question, but thanks for a great presentation. Wonderful to see V3 and Prezi support. Thanks, Simeon. You said Mirador 3 supports IIIF image services. Can you not view a basic JPEG, or does it have to be in an image service? Oh, great question. You can view a basic JPEG in Mirador 3. So it supports the kind of level 0 use case of an image is available, but not through an image service. You definitely can do that. So maybe and it can be any image that the browser supports viewing of. IIIF and Mirador is terrific, but sometimes I would expect a better performance with regard to thumbnail view, something like a flipbook or Veneer Bush's Memex Vision. Yeah, no, we always hope we can improve performance and thumbnail viewing. So thanks for your comment, and we'd love to, if there's additional ways that you can, you know, help us improve performance, we'd love to hear from you. Where can I view the recording of this session? I'm not sure, but I'm sure the IIIF team and Meg will provide all those recordings available through the IIIF communication channels. I've tried to go fast through all the questions, and I appreciate everybody asking questions. And I don't see any more open questions, but feel free to ask some more questions. I think we have a couple more minutes. Camille, anything?
I'm not sure we have enough time for this, but we do have a fun preview of some upcoming Mirador work from Johannes.
Great.
If you're feeling up to it.
Yeah, sure. Let me just see how I can share my screen. I haven't used Zoom in a while. Wait a second. Can see in the webinar window. Just a second. So I've been working on kind of making transcriptions in OCR viewable and selectable in Mirador. And so I've been working on this for the last 2 weeks, and I'm hoping I can find the button to share my screen. But, yeah, okay. There we go. Just a second. Yep, there we go. So I hope you can all see this. It's a Mirador instance with one of the welcome libraries manifests, the Wunder der Vererbung, a German book from the 20s or something. And it has IIIF line annotations for the text. So if you look here, you can just see the annotations of the OCR. But this is one way of viewing kind of transcriptions in OCR and Mirador. But at the BSB, we wanted to have something that is more kind of overlaid over the image. So I went ahead and wrote some code to make this possible. And what this basically does is it draws an SVG overlay over the Mirador canvas. And it allows you to select the text and copy it, search Google with it, translate it, share it, whatever you want. And you can also kind of overlay it over the text, make it visible. And here you can see that the OCR is actually pretty decent. And it's not very pretty to look at because the line height's a bit irregular, but I think it's good enough. So if you can't read the font or something, that you can kind of make use of it. But I think the main feature here is that you can actually select text from a page image and do stuff with it. Yeah. So this has been the work of the last 2 weeks. It currently supports IIIF line annotations. And also if your manifest references external OCR, like an Alto or HOCR file, it can also parse that. So, and it also uses word level coordinates in that case. I think I have an example with a more complex manifest. Report of the medical officer has some tables where you can see it. Let me see. Yeah, so the OCR is not very good on this one, but it shows you that you can also kind of render complex layouts with it and kind of select it and do stuff with it. It's also quite speedy, and it also follows basically your panning and zooming. Also works great on mobile, so yeah, I think it's a neat feature kind of to bridge the gap between like a facsimile image and the text on this image, and kind of allowing you kind of to cite it in a paper, Google a quote from a book or something. So I think it can be quite useful if the OCR is good enough, which is becoming more and more the case, I think. Yeah. So I'm currently working on making a plugin from that. It's currently implemented as a change to the Mirador core, but we're planning to release it as a plugin in the next few weeks, so people can kind of use it in their own applications. I'm also going to publish a demo once it's ready, and yeah, I'm hoping this can be useful for people. And I'm also looking for test manifests. So if you have a manifest that references external text as an OCR or an annotation, please contact me. I'm always looking for weird corner cases that break my code and can make it more stable. So yeah. If you have questions, I'm available on the IIIF Slack and on Twitter. Just come up to me. I hope I can answer your questions.
All right, thank you, Johannes. This is a really great demo, and I think just a kind of good example of where things are headed with plugin development for Mirador 3. So please, thank you, everyone. We don't want to keep you from the next IIIF week presentation. We're on Slack, we are on Twitter, and hope to see you at a community call soon. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Okay.